The ledger was neat, the ink still dark. Names of children lined the page, birth dates, cloth allowances, lessons paid for. But beside the column marked Mother, there was only a thin dash. No name, no hand, just absence. The dash appeared again and again, as if someone had decided that the woman who raised the master's children did not exist at all. This story is for the few willing to face what history tried to bury. Before we begin this story, if you're drawn to the dark stories that history tried to erase, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the stories we uncover every day. And let us know in the comments which state you're watching from. We love seeing how far these forgotten stories are reaching. The plantation sat low against the river, its galleries catching the morning fog like gauze. Cypress knees broke the water near the landing. Inside the big house, floors shone from years of careful polishing, and doors closed softly, as if sound itself were regulated. The year was deep into the century, when land meant power and paper meant truth. Deeds lived in chests, births lived in ledgers, and ownership of fields, of furniture, of people was written by men who kept the keys. There was a hierarchy you could feel in your bones. At the top, the master's study with its locked cabinet. Below it, the nursery, bright with lace and wooden toys. Below that, the kitchens, warm and watched. And beyond the windows, the quarters, where names were spoken aloud but rarely written down. The house controlled the ink controlled memory. She moved between these worlds without ever belonging to either of them. Her footsteps were quiet on the stairs. Her hands smelled faintly of milk and soap. When she entered a room, conversation thinned, then resumed. She was necessary. She was invisible. Her name, spoken softly in the kitchen and never in the study, was Ruth. She was small-boned, careful with her eyes, and precise in her habits. She counted breaths when fear pressed close. She remembered songs word for word. She knew which boards creaked and which doors latched without noise. The children clung to her skirts. They slept only when she sang. They learned to walk by gripping her fingers. In the nursery, she was called Nurse, a title that gave function without granting a name. The master, Elias Harrow, kept his beard trimmed and his voice level. He prized order. He prized reputation more. He could read a column of figures as easily as a face, and he did not like surprises. His wife, Margaret, moved with brittle grace. She preferred silence to confrontation, appearances to truth. She watched Ruth with eyes that measured, not accused, eyes that stored grievances for later. Then there was Thomas Bell, the overseer. He wore patience like a second coat. He smiled with his mouth and not his eyes. He understood how to move paper without leaving fingerprints. He understood how fear traveled faster than commands. The incident came quietly. A child fell ill in the night, fever climbing, breath shallow. Ruth stayed awake until dawn, cool cloths, whispered prayers, counting breaths. The child lived. In the morning, the master ordered the ledger brought to the nursery. He watched as the clerk wrote expenses, medicine, extra linens, Ruth's time. And then the master paused at the line where a mother's name should have been. "Leave it blank," he said. The clerk hesitated. Ruth felt the pause like a hand at her throat. The pen scratched a dash. That dash erased something irreversible. From that moment, the cost of knowing became personal. What Ruth had given, years, milk, sleep, love, would never be acknowledged. And worse, The blank space meant the truth could be moved, sold, or denied without resistance. Ruth began to notice patterns. The way certain papers were moved after supper. The way Thomas Bell lingered near the study when visitors arrived. One afternoon, sent to fetch a shawl, she saw the cabinet open. Inside, deeds stacked with red seals. A folded letter slipped free and fell. She did not read it then. She listened. Footsteps, voices. She slid the letter back and left. That night, sleep would not come. She replayed the dash in the ledger. The next day, while the children napped, she returned. The letter named a transfer, land sold quietly to a cousin upriver. It mentioned liabilities to be resolved before winter. No names, no mothers, only numbers. Ruth realized the dash was not neglect, it was preparation. Witnesses were silent, but not blind. In the laundry, a woman avoided Ruth's eyes and whispered, "Papers move when they're afraid." In the yard, a man stopped mid-sentence when Thomas passed. Ruth felt watched in new ways. Doors closed more firmly. Conversations ended sooner. There came a quiet pause, an afternoon of doubt. Ruth sat on the nursery floor, back against the wall, children breathing in sleep. Exhaustion pressed in. She questioned herself. Perhaps she imagined patterns. Perhaps the dash meant nothing. Then she saw the child's drawing on the floor, 4 figures holding hands. The smallest had no face. The pause broke. She stood. She began to keep her own ledger, not on paper, but in memory. Dates, glances, words half-spoken. She repeated them at night like prayers. Thomas Bell began to ask where Ruth went during naps. Margaret called Ruth into the parlor. Tea steamed untouched. The mistress spoke of gratitude without warmth, of boundaries without names. She mentioned the children's future, schools, marriages, inheritances. She mentioned Ruth's usefulness. Then she mentioned, casually, the quarters being rearranged, families separated to make room. The threat was soft and precise. Ruth understood it. Silence in exchange for proximity to the children. Truth traded for access. That night, Thomas Bell stood too close on the stairs. His voice was gentle. "Curiosity shortens lives," he said. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. Ruth decided to hide something where paper could not reach. The truth was revealed indirectly, during a storm. Rain pinned the house in place, candles guttered. In the study, the cabinet was opened again. Ruth moved like a shadow, the map of the house alive in her feet. She found a second ledger, older, heavier. In it, the dash appeared again, but once, faintly, there was a name scratched through. Hers. She did not take the book. She pressed her thumb to the page, ink smearing her skin, proof without possession. The cost hit all at once, rage, grief, a hollowing fear. Footsteps approached. Ruth replaced the ledger and stepped back into darkness as Thomas entered, eyes scanning, patient. Truth had surfaced. It could not be unseen, but it could still be crushed. Whispers followed. A child asked why Ruth cried at night. Margaret locked the cabinet and smiled more often. The land transfer completed before winter. In the public books, nothing changed. In private, the children grew, their hands less needing. Ruth's proximity faded. One morning, she was assigned elsewhere. No explanation, no farewell written. Yet some things slipped through. A song taught to a child who hummed it later in the hall. A habit of counting breaths passed on. a memory that refused to stay blank. For those willing to question the version of history they were given, listen to what isn't written. If a life is erased with a dash, does the truth disappear or does it wait? Who benefits most when a mother's name is missing from the page? And how many histories rest on blank spaces we were never meant to notice?